Theresa May won the support of 60% of Tory MPs, but that doesn't guarantee victory in the next phase of the contest, a vote of party members. The Home Secretary emphasised her credentials as a leader who could heal the splits of the referendum.
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to have won so much support from my colleagues. I've won votes from Conservative MPs from across the party, from left and right, Leavers and Remainers, MPs from the length and breadth of the country. This vote shows that the Conservative Party can come together and that under my leadership it will.
Unless, that is, Andrea Leadsom beats her to number 10. The Energy Minister won a quarter of Tory MPs, but her supporters believe she could just be what the activists like.
My first task is to show how great our potential is as a nation. Let's banish the pessimists.
Leadsom for leader! When do we want it? Now!
And after that morning rallying cry, her MPs and other supporters marched on Parliament to head off what her team was calling a possible establishment stitch-up. They feared Theresa May's campaign would lend MPs to Michael Gove to keep Andrea Leadsom off the ballot paper, for fear the outsider, a new Margaret Thatcher to some, could beat the Home Secretary with the party members.
What we have now is a candidate we are really excited about, who we think the party and the country are going to love.
Which previous candidates have you supported? Ian Duncan-Smith?
I supported Ian Duncan-Smith.
Some people would say this is an attempt at the Ian Duncan-Smith experiment all over again.
What you've got here is somebody who supported the side that the British people supported.
Hands off anyone who voted Remain. So you're going to unite the country?
Because they voted the
and the party.
Absolutely.
Have you done this sort of thing before?
I've never marched on Parliament before. This is my first time, and it feels wonderful.
You feel like a Corbynista? A sort of right-wing Corbynista?
A right-wing Corbynista.
I think she's fantastic, and I've seen people tweeting this morning, they're Labour supporters, and they are saying, we're backing her. You have to remember...
that might be a cause for some concern for some Tories.
You have to remember that she is the Leave candidate.
Some people in your party are wondering about, something the MPs are wondering about, is whether the party that Theresa May badged, stigmatised as the nasty party, whether some of those values are getting a resurgence with your campaign.
I'm not aware that that's the case at all. I mean, you have to be more specific.
I looked around the crowd of people that were at your launch, at the speech today, and an awful lot of them are people who didn't have much sympathy with David Cameron's modernisation of the Tory party.
OK. Well, I mean, I'm delighted with the support I've had from colleagues from right across the party. I mean, my ambitions as leader would be to absolutely prioritise the success of leaving the EU. But in terms of my own agenda, I have an absolute passion for social justice.
The Justice Secretary, Michael Gove, now knocked out of the leadership contest, worries that David Cameron's social reform agenda and his attempts to modernise the Conservative Party could now be snuffed out.
Our first concern should always be the fate of the vulnerable and the voiceless, the dispossessed and the powerless in our society. And I hope in the future to continue to be a voice for those people and an advocate for those who need government most. Thank you very much. Thank you.
As his campaign closes down, Andrea Leadsom's moves to the country. Her critics are pulling apart her claims about a career at the very top of finance, including helping to stop a bank run after Barings collapsed.
Eddie George, who was then Governor of the Bank of England, called together a small group of bankers, including myself, and we worked over the weekend to calm the fears of banks who were exposed to Barings.
You said in Parliament you were one of a small group of bankers, the Bank of England Governor, Eddie George, back then, called together, who managed to help to stop a bank run after the Barings collapse. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, we were calling banks and around the world and saying to them, it's fine.
It sounded like you were in a room with
banks.
Eddie George, sort of sweating it through the weekend, and you helped to stop a bank run. You personally, because that's what you said.
Yes, absolutely. So very specifically, I was at the time the banker responsible for the relationship with Barings. We were called by the Bank of England and told we need to absolutely reassure other people. And so, yes, we had some very late nights.
Because that's what people are disputing.
Yes, me. I don't know why they're disputing it. Me.
A former colleague at the fund manager Invesco claims Andrea Leadsom's exaggerated her hands-on experience of high finance.
What irritated me, I suppose it's irritation, yes, I'll admit to irritation, was somebody projecting themselves as being somebody in a senior investment management role in a major organization, when actually she wasn't. Because people add credibility. You know, when they think of senior investment officer, enormous responsibility for massive amounts of money, taking daily investment management decisions, and therefore speaking with some authority on those topics. Andrea Leadsom wasn't that. She was a part-time assistant to the chief investment officer, working on special projects.
Have you heard of Robert Stevens, who worked at Invesco?
Only through the press. No, I don't know him.
Because he says you didn't manage, another of the claims that your supporters have put about, he says you didn't manage any teams, large or small, didn't manage any funds.
I'm absolutely clear. When I was at Invesco Perpetual, I was senior investment officer, working very closely with the chief investment officer.
Did you manage funds?
No, I'm not a funds manager. I managed in Barclays. I managed the team that deals with Barclays' relationships with banks around the world.
You said you ran the investment team at Barclays.
I recruited fund managers.
It's not the same thing, is it?
That I'm not sure if that's my words.
Running the investment team at Barclays.
Yeah.
It's from an article that you wrote for the Financial Times.
Okay, so that is the team of fund managers. So the team of fund managers. I mean, I don't really understand why there's such a misunderstanding.
People say you haven't got a practical experience of actually moving around the billions, and people might have got that impression from what your supporters were saying and from what you've said in the past. But in fact, you weren't doing that. You were at a different sort of management level, managing the people who do that.
Exactly right. And that's very clear in my CV.
And you've only ever had a license to trade for about 3 months of your life.
I have not been a funds manager.
There was an evangelical feeling to the support on show for Andrea Leadsom today. She, like her opponent Theresa May, is a regular churchgoer. And according to someone very close to her, feels she has been spoken to directly by God. And we could not only be looking at two women running for the leadership, but two quite devout Christians. Do you ever feel that you've been spoken to directly by God?
That question is not one that is for, open laughing at and poking fun at, and I can absolutely feel that that's what you would like to do. So I absolutely am a Christian, and I'm very proud of it, and it absolutely acts in the background in my desire to have a very honest campaign with high integrity and so on. But if you're asking me, am I going to be sort of saying, oh well, God's told me to do this and do that, then of course that's not the case.
What do we want? Let's up the leader!
150,000 party members now have the summer to decide whether the outsider or the front runner will be our next Prime Minister.